My daughter was telling her friends, Dad has lost his mind, we're making his decisions now. I couldn't sleep that night after hearing this. The first thing I did in the morning was call my lawyer. By evening, I had donated my house. I wonder who looks out of their mind now. Before we begin, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Robert Thompson, and at 73 years old, I had been living alone in my Portland, Oregon home for 5 years since losing my wife, Eleanor. The house sat on Maple Street in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, a beautiful 1920s craftsman that Eleanor and I had purchased 40 years ago when Sarah was just 8 years old. The house held everything we had built together, Eleanor's rose garden that bloomed every spring in cascades of pink and white, the kitchen where we'd hosted countless family dinners, birthday parties, and holiday gatherings, the living room where we'd watched Sarah grow from a curious child into a successful real estate agent. Every corner held memories of our life together. But lately, those memories felt under siege. It started small, as these things often do. Sarah began visiting more frequently after Eleanor's funeral, which I initially welcomed. A widower's house can feel painfully quiet, and her presence brought some warmth back to rooms that had grown too still. She'd bring groceries, check on the furnace, ask about my medications with the kind of attentive care that made me grateful to have such a devoted daughter. "Dad, are you remembering to take your blood pressure pills?" she'd ask, checking the weekly pill organizer Eleanor used to fill for me. "Of course, sweetheart. Same time every morning with breakfast. And you're eating enough? I worry about you cooking for just one person." I appreciated her concern, truly I did. But somewhere around the 6-month mark, her visits took on a different quality. Instead of casual check-ins, they became inspections. Sarah would walk through the house with a critical eye, noting loose handrails, commenting on the age of appliances, questioning whether the stairs were safe for someone my age. "This house is really too big for one person, Dad," she said one autumn afternoon, standing in our 4-bedroom home. "All these stairs, the big yard to maintain, the old electrical system, it's a lot of responsibility." I looked around the living room where Eleanor's quilts still draped the furniture, where her books lined the shelves, where our wedding photos sat on the mantel beside pictures of Sarah's childhood. Responsibility? This wasn't responsibility, this was home. "I manage just fine, Sarah. Been taking care of this place for 4 decades. "I know, but that was when Mom was here to help. Things are different now." Different. Everything was different without Eleanor, but not in the ways Sarah implied. I wasn't failing to manage my life. I was grieving the loss of my partner while maintaining the home we'd built together. The suggestion started small. Senior living communities with wonderful amenities, adult day programs for social interaction, home health aides for peace of mind. Each suggestion chipped away at my independence, framed as loving concern but feeling increasingly like pressure to surrender the life I'd worked so hard to build. That Thursday evening in November, Sarah arrived with her laptop and a folder thick with brochures. She settled into Eleanor's chair, spreading glossy pamphlets across the coffee table like a real estate presentation. "Dad, I want to show you some options I've been researching. Places where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance, where there are people around if you need help." The brochures featured smiling elderly people playing shuffleboard, sitting in carefully arranged conversation groups, participating in what appeared to be supervised craft time. Hillside Manor, Cedar Grove Assisted Living, Oak Valley Senior Community. All clean, all safe, all sterile. "These places look very nice, Sarah, but I'm not interested in moving. This is my home. I understand it's hard to think about leaving, but be realistic, Dad. You're 73 years old. Living alone in a house this size isn't practical anymore." Practical, another word that had crept into her vocabulary lately. As if my entire adult life needed to be reduced to practical considerations. As if emotional attachment to the place where I'd raised my family was somehow unreasonable. What's impractical about it? I pay my bills, maintain the property, take care of myself. I have good neighbors, a doctor I trust, routines that work for me. Sarah's expression shifted to what I'd come to recognize as her patient voice, the tone she probably used with difficult clients. "Dad, I've noticed some concerning things. You forgot about your dentist appointment last month. You paid the electric bill twice in September. Yesterday you told me the same story about Mr. Henderson's dog 3 times in one conversation." I stared at her, processing these accusations. The dentist appointment had been rescheduled due to an emergency, which I'd handled appropriately. The electric bill duplication was a bank error that had been corrected, and I certainly hadn't repeated any story about Henderson's dog. Sarah, none of that is accurate. See? This is what I mean. Memory issues, confusion about details. These are early warning signs that we can't ignore. The audacity of it took my breath away. She was rewriting reality, creating a narrative of decline that existed only in her interpretation of perfectly normal events. But her tone was so confident, so clinical, that for a moment I doubted my own recollection. After she left that evening, I sat in my recliner trying to make sense of what had just happened. My own daughter was gaslighting me, manufacturing evidence of cognitive decline to support some agenda I couldn't quite grasp. The house felt different after her visit, as if her presence had introduced a poison that lingered in the air. I was still processing this troubling conversation when my neighbor Martha Simpson knocked on my door the next afternoon. Martha and her husband Frank had lived next door for 30 years, becoming Eleanor's closest friends and my trusted confidants after her death. "Robert, I need to tell you something," Martha said, settling into my kitchen with the gravity of someone bearing difficult news. "I was at the grocery store this morning, and I overheard Sarah talking to Barbara Henderson by the produce section. Barbara Henderson was a local busybody who collected and distributed neighborhood gossip with evangelical fervor. If Sarah was confiding in Barbara, the entire community would know within hours. What did she say?" Martha looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "She was telling Barbara that you're showing signs of dementia, that you're forgetting to pay bills, getting confused about appointments, repeating yourself constantly. She said—" Martha paused, clearly reluctant to continue. "What did she say, Martha?" "She said that your mind is going, and that she and her husband Michael are having to make decisions for you now, that you can't be trusted to handle your own affairs anymore." The kitchen suddenly felt cold despite the afternoon sunlight streaming through Eleanor's lace curtains. My own daughter was spreading lies about my mental capacity to our neighbors, creating a public narrative of incompetence that would justify whatever plan she was developing. "Martha, you've known me for 30 years. Do I seem confused or incompetent to you?" "Absolutely not. You're as sharp as you've ever been. That's why I'm telling you this. Something doesn't feel right about what Sarah's doing." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Eleanor's side of the mattress feeling emptier than usual. Why would Sarah fabricate stories about my mental decline? What did she gain by portraying me as incompetent to our neighbors and friends? The answer came to me as I remembered her detailed knowledge of local real estate values, her constant references to the impracticality of my living situation, her carefully curated collection of senior living brochures. Sarah worked for Morrison & Associates, Portland's largest residential real estate firm. She knew exactly what my house was worth in the current market. According to recent comparable sales in Laurelhurst, homes like mine were selling for between $800,000 and $1.2 million. The thought made me sick. While I grieved Eleanor's absence and tried to maintain the life we'd built together, Sarah was calculating the market value of my memories. Friday morning brought another revelation. I was collecting mail when Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down approached with her usual friendly demeanor. "Robert, how are you feeling? Sarah mentioned you've been having some health challenges." More public seeding of the incompetency narrative. How many neighbors had received similar updates about my supposed decline? "I'm feeling fine, Mrs. Patterson. What specifically did Sarah say?" "Oh, just that you're having some memory issues, getting confused about things. She's such a devoted daughter, checking on you so regularly. It's wonderful that she's taking charge of your care." Taking charge of my care. The phrase lodged in my throat like a stone. That afternoon, I called Dr. Amanda Chen, my physician for the past 15 years. If Sarah was claiming I had cognitive issues, I wanted documented proof of my mental acuity. "Dr. Chen, I'd like to schedule a comprehensive cognitive evaluation." "Is there something specific you're concerned about, Robert?" "I want documentation of my mental capacity. For legal purposes." The appointment was scheduled for the following Wednesday. But I couldn't wait that long to take action. Friday evening, as I sat in Eleanor's garden watching her roses prepare for winter dormancy, I made a decision that would change everything. Saturday morning, I called David Kellerman, the attorney who had handled Eleanor's estate and served as our family lawyer for 20 years. David's office occupied the top floor of a historic building in downtown Portland, with tall windows overlooking the Willamette River. He'd guided Eleanor and me through house purchases, will preparations, and various legal matters with quiet competence and genuine care. "Robert, good to hear from you. How are you managing?" "I need to see you Monday morning, David. It's urgent." "Of course. Can you give me a sense of what this is about?" "My daughter and her plans for my future. And my plans for my property." Monday morning found me in David's familiar office, surrounded by law books and family photos that reminded me why I trusted this man with my most important decisions. I explained Sarah's behavior, the public claims about my mental decline, the pressure to relocate to senior housing. "This is unfortunately more common than you might think, Robert," David said, taking notes on a legal pad. "Adult children sometimes begin questioning their parents' capacity when significant assets are involved. What can I do to protect myself? First, let's establish that you have full legal capacity. Do you have any cognitive issues that might affect your decision-making?" "None whatsoever. I'm scheduling tests with Dr. Chen to document that." "Good. Second, let's review your current estate planning. Is your house titled solely in your name?" "Yes. After Eleanor died, everything transferred to me automatically." "Then you have complete control over the disposition of your property. You can sell it, gift it, or bequeath it to anyone you choose." An idea began forming in my mind, beautiful in its justice and simplicity. "David, what would be involved in donating the house to charity?" "It's actually quite straightforward. You'd deed the property directly to the charitable organization, they'd handle the paperwork, and you'd receive a substantial tax deduction. Many clients find it very satisfying to see their major assets support causes they care about." I thought about Eleanor's volunteer work at Portland Children's Hospital, the countless hours she'd spent reading to young patients, organizing fundraising events, bringing comfort to families during their darkest moments. She'd often said that children's hospitals were doing God's work, providing healing and hope when families needed it most. "I want to donate my house to Portland Children's Hospital." David looked up from his notes, studying my face carefully. "Robert, this is a major decision. Are you certain you want to proceed?" "Absolutely certain. How quickly can we make this happen?" "I can have the paperwork prepared by this afternoon. The hospital will need to approve the donation, but I don't anticipate any problems. Properties like yours are exactly the kind of assets they hope to receive." "I want this completed before Sarah makes her next move." "What do you mean?" "She's planning to have me declared incompetent so she can take control of my finances and sell the house. I'd rather see it benefit sick children than fund her lifestyle." David nodded slowly. "I understand. And Robert, this will send a very clear message about your mental acuity. Incompetent people don't make strategic charitable donations." 3 hours later, I sat in Portland Children's Hospital's development office, meeting with Director of Philanthropy Jessica Martinez and Chief Development Officer Thomas Wright. The hospital occupied a modern complex in northwest Portland, its cheerful colors and child-friendly artwork creating an atmosphere of hope despite the serious medical work happening within its walls. "Mr. Thompson, we're incredibly honored by your generous offer," Jessica said, reviewing the donation documents David had prepared. "A gift of this magnitude will make an enormous difference in our ability to serve families throughout the region. My wife Eleanor volunteered here for many years. She always said this place represented the best of humanity. We remember Eleanor fondly. Her work with our reading program touched hundreds of children's lives." The paperwork moved with surprising efficiency. By 4:30 p.m., my house officially belonged to Portland Children's Hospital. The deed transfer was recorded with Multnomah County, the tax implications were calculated, and I walked out of the hospital with the profound satisfaction of knowing Eleanor would have approved completely. That evening, I called Martha and Frank Simpson. "Martha, I have some news. I've donated my house to Portland Children's Hospital, but where will you live?" "I'll figure that out. The important thing is that Sarah can't manipulate me into selling it for her benefit." Frank took the phone. "Jesus, Robert, that's quite a move." It felt right. Eleanor would have loved knowing the house is helping sick children instead of funding Sarah's real estate ambitions. Tuesday morning, I drove to Seaside, Oregon, the coastal town where Eleanor and I had honeymooned 45 years earlier. The November ocean was gray and dramatic, waves crashing against the rocks with the kind of power that put human problems in perspective. I spent the day looking at small apartments and condos, places where an old widower could live quietly by the sea. By evening, I'd put a deposit down on a one-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from the beach. The rent was reasonable, the view was spectacular, and most importantly, it represented my choice, not someone else's plan for my life. Wednesday morning brought my cognitive evaluation with Dr. Chen. The tests were comprehensive. Memory assessments, problem-solving exercises, attention span measurements, executive function evaluations. I scored in the 95th percentile for my age group. "Robert, your cognitive function is excellent," Dr. Chen said, reviewing the results. "Whatever prompted this evaluation, you can be confident that your mental acuity is completely intact. I'd like written documentation of that conclusion." Of course. Are you concerned about legal challenges to your capacity? Let's just say I want to be prepared for any eventuality. Thursday afternoon, Sarah called to schedule her next visit. "Dad, I want to continue our conversation about your living situation. I've made appointments for us to tour some facilities this weekend." "That's not necessary, Sarah. I've already made my decision about where I'll be living." "You have? What kind of decision?" "You'll understand everything when you come by tomorrow. Say, 2 p.m.? Her voice carried suspicion. "Dad, you're not making any major decisions without consulting me, are you?" The irony was breathtaking. The daughter who'd been planning to declare me incompetent was now upset about not being consulted on my decisions. "Sarah, I'm 73 years old, not 3 years old. I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions." Friday arrived gray and drizzling, typical November weather in Portland. I spent the morning packing personal items, Eleanor's jewelry, our photo albums, books that held particular meaning, my father's watch, the essentials of a life lived, reduced to boxes that would fit in my sedan. At exactly 2 p.m., Sarah's white BMW pulled into my driveway. She emerged, carrying her usual folder of brochures and legal documents, her expression determined. This was clearly going to be the conversation where she'd present her ultimatum about my future. "Dad, I'm glad we're finally going to have a serious discussion about your situation," she said, settling into the living room with proprietary confidence. "I've scheduled tours at 3 different facilities next week, and I think you'll be impressed with the level of care they provide." "Sarah, sit down. There's something I need to tell you." I am sitting down. "Now let me show you what I found. Hillside Manor has an opening in their memory care unit." "Memory care unit?" "Well, given your recent confusion and memory issues, I think it's important to be proactive." I stared at my daughter, this woman I'd raised and loved and supported through college, wedding planning, career changes, and personal struggles. When had she become someone who could look me in the eye and lie with such casual confidence? "Sarah, what memory issues are you referring to, specifically?" She pulled out a notebook, flipping through pages covered with her handwriting. "Last month, you forgot your dentist appointment. In September, you double-paid the electric bill. You've been repeating stories, forgetting conversations we've had, showing signs of confusion about dates and appointments. Those are all fabrications, Sarah. The dentist rescheduled due to an emergency. The electric bill issue was a bank error that I corrected immediately. And I have never repeated stories or forgotten our conversations." Her confidence faltered slightly. "Dad, denial is common in the early stages of cognitive decline." "Is it? Because I just had comprehensive cognitive testing done with Dr. Chen. Would you like to see the results?" I handed her the evaluation report. She read in silence, her face growing pale as she absorbed the documented evidence of my perfect mental acuity. "These tests don't tell the whole story," she said finally. "I see you every week. I notice changes that might not show up on formal evaluations." "Sarah, you've been lying to our neighbors about my mental capacity. You've been telling people that you're making decisions for me because I can't handle my own affairs. What I'd like to know is why." The question hung in the air between us. Outside, rain drummed against the windows Eleanor had loved to sit by while doing needlework. The house felt heavy with the weight of impending truth. "I haven't been lying. I've been expressing legitimate concerns about your ability to live independently." "To what end?" Another pause. Longer this time. "This house is too much for you to handle. It's not safe. It's not practical." "And?" "And if we sold it, we could ensure you're properly cared for while preserving the asset value for your future needs." There it was. The truth, finally spoken aloud. Sarah wanted to sell my house and control the proceeds under the guise of ensuring my care. "Sarah, this house isn't anything. It's my house, my asset, my decision what happens to it." Dad, be reasonable. You can't live here forever. Better to plan ahead than wait for a crisis. You're absolutely right. I can't live here forever. That's why I donated it to Portland Children's Hospital yesterday. The silence that followed was profound. Sarah's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. Her carefully prepared presentation materials slipped from her hands, scattering across Eleanor's Persian rug. You… what? I donated the house to Portland Children's Hospital. As of yesterday afternoon, it belongs to them. That's impossible. You can't make decisions like that. Your mental state, the confusion, you need supervision. Sarah, I just showed you documentation proving my mental state is perfect. The donation was made with full legal capacity, witnessed by attorneys, and approved by hospital administrators. She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window where Eleanor's bird feeder still attracted cardinals and sparrows. This is insane. You can't just give away $800,000. $800,000. She'd calculated the value down to the hundred thousands place. I can give away my own property to any recipient I choose. What about me? What about your family? What about my inheritance? And there was the final truth. Not concern for my well-being, not worry about my safety or mental decline, simple greed, dressed up as filial devotion. Sarah, what inheritance did you think you were entitled to? This house has been our family home for 40 years. I grew up here. I assumed. You assumed wrong. I never promised you this house. And after spending months lying about my mental capacity to justify seizing control of my assets, you've lost any claim to my generosity. She turned from the window, her face twisted with an emotion I'd never seen from my daughter before. Pure rage. You spiteful old man. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you know how much money you've just thrown away? I know exactly what I've done. I've ensured that my most valuable asset will help sick children instead of funding your lifestyle. My lifestyle? I work 60 hours a week selling real estate to support the life you think you deserve, not the life you've actually earned. The doorbell rang, interrupting our confrontation. Through the front window, I could see David Kellerman's car in my driveway, followed by a van marked Portland Children's Hospital. Excuse me, Sarah, I have visitors. I opened the door to find David accompanied by Jessica Martinez from the hospital and two other people I didn't recognize. Robert, I hope you don't mind us stopping by, David said. Jessica wanted to personally thank you again, and there are some final paperwork details to complete. Of course, please come in. As the group entered my living room, Sarah stood frozen by the window, her presentation materials still scattered on the floor. Sarah, I said, I'd like you to meet Jessica Martinez from Portland Children's Hospital. Jessica, this is my daughter, Sarah. Jessica extended her hand warmly. Sarah, your father has made the most generous donation we've received this year. This house will be sold to fund our new pediatric cancer wing. He's going to help save countless children's lives. Sarah stared at Jessica's outstretched hand without taking it. There's been a misunderstanding, Sarah said, her voice strained. My father, he's not competent to make decisions of this magnitude. He has dementia, memory issues. This donation needs to be reversed. Jessica looked confused, glancing between Sarah and me. David stepped forward. Ma'am, I can assure you that your father underwent comprehensive legal and medical evaluation before making this donation. His competency is thoroughly documented. That's impossible. I've been monitoring his decline for months. Forgotten appointments, repeated stories, confusion about basic tasks. Sarah, I said quietly, stop embarrassing yourself. But she was beyond caring about embarrassment. This man cannot be trusted to make major decisions. He's showing clear signs of dementia. This donation was made under diminished capacity and should be voided immediately. Jessica exchanged glances with David, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in front of her. Mr. Thompson, she said carefully, if there are family concerns about your decision-making capacity, perhaps we should postpone finalizing the donation until… No, I said firmly. There are no legitimate concerns about my capacity. My daughter has been fabricating stories about my mental decline to justify taking control of my assets. I have medical documentation proving my cognitive function is perfect. I handed Jessica the evaluation from Dr. Chen. She read quickly, then looked at Sarah with obvious skepticism. Ma'am, this evaluation was conducted just 2 days ago. Your father's cognitive function tested in the 95th percentile for his age group. Sarah's face crumpled. The elaborate fiction she'd constructed was dissolving in front of witnesses who could no longer be deceived. But the appointments he missed, the bills he paid twice, the repeated stories. Never happened, I said. You made all of that up to justify your plan to sell my house and control the proceeds. David cleared his throat. Perhaps we should give you and your daughter some privacy to discuss this family matter. That's not necessary, David. Sarah was just leaving. She looked around the room at the assembled witnesses to her humiliation, then gathered her scattered brochures with shaking hands. Dad, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. No, Sarah. The biggest mistake would have been trusting you with my future. After she left, the hospital representatives completed their paperwork with professional efficiency. The house would be listed for sale within a month, with proceeds supporting pediatric cancer research and treatment. Eleanor's garden would be photographed and documented before the sale, with plans to recreate elements of it in the hospital's healing garden. Mr. Thompson, Jessica said as they prepared to leave, I hope you know what a profound impact this gift will have. Children who haven't even been born yet will benefit from your generosity. After everyone left, I sat alone in Eleanor's chair, listening to the rain and processing what had just happened. My daughter had spent months planning to manipulate me into senior housing while she profited from selling our family home. But her greed had been her downfall. By fabricating stories about my mental decline, she'd forced me to document my complete competency, which enabled me to make the donation that ended her scheme. That evening, Martha Simpson called. Robert, Sarah came by earlier. She was very upset, crying and saying that you'd lost your mind and given away your house. What did you tell her? I told her that donating your house to sick children was the sanest thing I'd heard in years. 2 weeks later, I moved into my apartment in Seaside. The ocean view from my bedroom window reminded me every morning that I'd chosen freedom over manipulation, generosity over greed. Sarah called several times, trying to reconcile, but her apologies always circled back to requests that I reconsider the donation or provide her with financial support to make up for the inheritance she'd lost. The house sold in 3 days for $875,000. Portland Children's Hospital announced that the proceeds would fund the, quote, Eleanor and Robert Thompson Pediatric Cancer Wing, recognizing both my donation and Eleanor's volunteer service. At the dedication ceremony 6 months later, I met families whose children had benefited from the facility. Their gratitude made every difficult moment with Sarah worthwhile. Did I regret losing my relationship with my daughter? Yes, but I don't regret refusing to be manipulated by someone who saw me as nothing more than a source of money to fund her ambitions. Sometimes the people who demand the most from us are the ones who deserve the least. My story isn't unique. Adult children trying to manipulate aging parents out of their assets is unfortunately common. But what my experience taught me is that dignity and independence are worth more than family peace purchased through surrender of self-respect. Sarah eventually moved to Seattle, claiming she needed a, quote, a fresh start away from the toxic family dynamics in Portland. Last I heard, she was working for a commercial real estate firm and telling people that her father had suffered a mental breakdown and impulsively donated his fortune to charity. Let her tell that story. I know the truth, and more importantly, so do the children whose lives will be saved by the Eleanor and Robert Thompson Pediatric Cancer Wing. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories.